Hello and welcome. I'm Agam Vakil and you're watching What You Miss on Bloomberg Quint Live. First, the headlines. Indian equity benchmarks rose to fresh record closing highs led by gains in auto heavyweights. Airtel makes its fourth acquisition this year, buys Millicom's operations in Rwanda. And Ola looks to go the Uber way, acquires Foodpanda in an all-stock deal, also promises to invest $200 million in the food delivery service provider. And the National Highway Authority of India has awarded only 1/10 of the total target of new road contracts in the first 9 months of this financial year. Now, Indian equity benchmarks rose to fresh record closing highs led by gains in the auto heavyweights like Maruti Suzuki, Hero MotoCorp, Tata Motors and Mahindra & Mahindra. And both benchmark indices clocked handsome gains. Pradeep Pandya is standing by to give us all the market action and especially what has led to this rally. Pradeep?
So bulls were in full control today. If you look at it, from the very first minute, market opened higher. There was a gap up, and then we built on to those levels. In fact, towards the end, Nifty ended at 10,463. That's just 27 points away from the all-time high of 10,490. Possibly, we'll get there soon. But look at the mid-cap index, and in fact, the one of the mid-cap index, which is the Nifty Free Float 100, hit an all-time high already in today's trade. The other indices in the mid-cap and small-cap segment, both on BSE and NSE, were also on an average up by 1.5%. So market breadth was very strong. We had 80% stocks advancing in today's trade. And look at what happened to India VIX, which is down to 12 now, which is very close to the lower range. If you look at the recent movement over last few series. Leading sector today was without any doubt auto, and Maruti was leading from the front. It crossed 9,800 for the first time, on the way to 10,000 mark. Looks like for Maruti Suzuki. Hero Moto benefited because market was trying to play the rural theme today. There are a couple of reports that came out from the leading brokerages, and they think government will now increasingly focus on rural theme that includes insurance. So New India Assurance, this was the second up move in this stock. The stock that came out with an IPO at 800 rupees has been in a falling trend since then for over 5 to 6 weeks now, but is now recovering. ICICI Pru also benefited. Actually, on the negative side, we had only one sector, or rather two. IT stocks were trading weak in today's trade because rupee appreciated further, and that was a bad news for IT and pharma or exporting companies. If you just put them aside, even in mid-cap space, we had aviation stocks doing well after the data for November occupancy came out. Look at the rural theme. Some stocks that benefited on the back of it would include Jan Irrigation and Jan Irrigation DVR as well. We had PSUs doing well because if government goes on tries to implement some plan to boost the economy, the expenditure will be routed through some of the PSUs. So market was trying to identify some of those names. So you had BEML and ITI doing well. Also, there is anticipation that some relief could be given to the sugar companies. You had Sri Renuka and Dhampur Sugar doing well. Some of the more high beta names, if you look at Delta Corp, Den Network, a lot of stocks did very well, and even some of the small cap names that were in news today benefited a lot, like Radhan Infra and Gandhi Tubes on the back of the buyback or the interest coming in from big FIIs.
Well, thanks for that, Pradeep. Of course, markets going from strength to strength, but the Indian market valuations continue to be a big concern for many investors. In a conversation with Bloomberg Quint earlier today, Samir Arora of Helios Capital reiterated this worry, and he said Indian equities are a lot more expensive than some of their peers. He does not expect the markets to do well in 2018 as it did in, the year gone by. Let's listen into the slice of this conversation.
India is part of a pack, which is a global pack, that equity markets in general are doing well. India is definitely more expensive than many other markets. But if the world is up, we may not necessarily need massive foreign inflows to have our market go up. We can keep it up on our own by having domestic flows, although I am a foreign point. But I mean in general that it is true that some of the Indian stocks are really wild, in their valuations, and we've not had a correction. So sometime during the year, for some random reason, there'll be a correction. But in a big picture sense, I think that if the world markets are up, we can underperform them a little bit or something like that if it has to come to that. But we won't be in a negative direction while the world is positive. You don't have to, and you will not make the kind of returns that were made this year. But this is an unreasonable year. I mean, this is a year where we are all making 40-45% in a fund. You're not supposed to make that much. You're supposed to make 15% and sometimes even less to have an annualized return of 15-20%. So if there are good years, there will be bad years. But I don't think it'll be a negative year in any way. It'll be a normal good year, 10-15%. And if some events come together, maybe more.
And speaking about a constituent of the benchmark, Bharti Airtel has been on a shopping spree this year, and its latest acquisition is in Africa. The telecom operator has bought over peer Millicom business in Rwanda. So where does this place Airtel in the African market? Well, Somit Sarkar gets us all the details in this report.
Airtel recently acquired this telecom operations of Millicom, and Tigo Rwanda, that is the entity that Airtel acquired, has a revenue of close to around $60 million according to a note that ICICI Securities came out with. And this operations have a EBITDA margins of close to 20%, which brings the estimated acquisition cost to close to $60 to $70 million for Airtel. Now this is around 6 times the EBITDA of the acquired entity, and this amount is payable by Airtel over the next 2 years. Post this acquisition, the merged entity's revenue would be close to around $80 million. There would be only 2 players post this acquisition in the Rwanda market, and Airtel would be the second player with a revenue market share of close to 40%. Now, why this acquisition is important for Airtel? Because Airtel was struggling in the Rwanda market, and this acquisition could fix this problem for Bharti Airtel. And the EBITDA margins of Rwanda operations were negative, and this acquisition could change this for the company. Now, currently, the African business of Airtel is very important because it contributes around 65% to the net profit of the consolidated entity, and this is on the back of the improving margins. If you see, margins from the Airtel business have improved over the last 5 quarters from 23.1% to 32.3%.
Well, thanks for that, Somit. Moving on, Ola is looking to go the Uber way, and the country's largest cab aggregator will be acquiring the food delivery company Foodpanda in an all-stock deal. Nishant Sharma has all the details in this report.
Ola has acquired Foodpanda as India's operation in an all-stock deal. Now, Ola's venturing into food tech business comes, nearly 7 months after Uber launched its food delivery business, Uber Eats in India. Now, this is not the first time Ola is trying to try its hands on the food delivery business. 2 years back, it launched Ola Cafe, which it had to shut down nearly after a year. Now, Ola said that it's going to invest about $200 million to scale up operations in India. Saurabh Kochhar, who was the CEO of Foodpanda India, will move out and to pursue other pursue other possibilities. And Pranay Jivrajka, who was this founding partner at Ola, will be the interim CEO of Foodpanda's India operation. Now, food delivery business, till this point used to consider it as a game between Zomato and Swiggy. Now with players like Ola and Uber coming into foray, we might see a new set of discounting war also coming into the food delivery business in India.
But the Modi government has miles to go to achieve its annual road building target. The National Highway Authority of India aims to tender 10,000 kilometers worth of contracts in the current financial year. But so far, the NHAI has awarded only a little over a tenth of that goal. So what's the hurdle? Dhwani Pandya of Bloomberg News has the answers in this report.
The main reason for delays in awarding road orders this year is that NHAI, the National Highway Authority of India, is not awarding road orders until and unless 80% of the land is acquired. So delay in land acquisition is the key reason for delay in road orders this year. Another major factor that has impacted the pace of road tenders is implementation of goods and services tax from July. The government authority had to rework tenders with the new tax numbers. That also led to delays. Now with just 3 months to go, NHAI is expecting to award in total around 8,400 kilometers of road by December. The road order awarding pace is generally good in the last quarter of the fiscal. So analysts are expecting that even if they are not able to do 10,000 kilometers, they may be able to achieve around 6,500 kilometers of road projects, which is still higher than the last year's number of 4,500 kilometers.
And brokerages like CLSA, Credit Suisse and Citi expect the government to ramp up rural spending after the BJP lost some vote share in rural Gujarat. As we head towards the national elections, the Modi government may look to regain some of the lost popularity among the voters. Shraddha Babla is standing by with the highlights of some of these reports. Shraddha, it's a rural pivot from here, isn't it?
Well, yes, that's right. So while the BJP did do well in the urban centres despite demonetization and the GST impact, it did lose some ground in the rural areas and amidst high farm distress, and probably that's something which is driving analysts to expect that the government will announce pro-rural policies to regain some ground. Now, if you see CLSA, it has said that they're expecting more pro-rural policies from the government. In fact, they've said that the situation is complicated by the likely weak fiscal position because they believe that the GST collections are undershooting government's targets. However, they see GST as a bigger problem for FY19 rather than for FY18. But the important or the key takeaway from a stock perspective is that they believe that any large fiscal slippage would actually mean that the yields will harden further from here as well, and that should be negative for NBFCs. Credit Suisse has said that they expect the policy action in the budget both to focus on farm distress and also on a ramp up of DBT on fertilizers, crop insurance and some innovative price guarantee schemes for farmers. And contrary to the widely held belief, they are not expecting a fiscal slippage. Citi has also said that they expect the policy pivot to rural in 2018. They've said that rural India, which is coming off a low base, along with policy support, can actually throw up interesting opportunities from an equity perspective. And they have spoken about the stocks that they like on the back of this rural theme. So ACC, Dabur, Imami, Hero Motocorp, HUL, L&T Finance, Mahindra Mahindra Finance and PI Industries are their top picks. Is that what they have said?
Well, thanks for that, Shraddha. But keeping with Gujarat, as the BJP got to keep Gujarat too, Praveen Chakravarti, Bloomberg Quint's contributing editor, analyzes who voted and how. Let's take a look.
The BJP has always done better in the urban-rich constituencies traditionally. The gap between the BJP and the Congress is much wider in the urban-rich constituencies than in the rural poor. The BJP continues to maintain that lead over the Congress in urban constituencies. The BJP's urban vote share was 56% compared to the Congress's at 38%, still a massive lead. However, in rural constituencies, the Congress has had an edge over the BJP historically, except in 2014, where the BJP got a big lead even in rural constituencies. So in the 2017 election, the Congress bounced back and got a 46% vote share in rural constituencies versus the BJP's at 45%. We can observe a very similar trend in the high income and low income constituencies. Remember, urban and rural does not necessarily mean high income and low income. The BJP continues to have a 10 percentage point lead in the high income constituencies over the Congress. However, in the low-income constituencies, the Congress does better, but by just 1 percentage point. Is this a reflection of the income inequality that economists talk about in India, translating itself into political choices and preferences? Something to be discussed. In constituencies with a high percentage of youth voters, it is traditionally believed that the BJP does better. Actually, our analysis shows that that's perhaps not the case. While the BJP still does better in constituencies with higher youth voters, the gap actually is narrowed considerably. So if you look at the charts, in constituencies with high percentage of youth voters, the gap between the BJP and Congress is almost non-existent. What about Muslim voters? In constituencies where a higher percentage of Muslim voters are present, the BJP still leads the Congress in constituencies with a high percentage of Muslim voters, where Muslim voters are higher than the average Muslim voters in the state. But this gap has narrowed considerably from the 2014 election. So in some sense, the BJP's performance in constituencies with higher Muslim population is in line with its overall performance across the state, which is at 49%.
And Congress President Rahul Gandhi has questioned the credibility of Prime Minister Modi and his government after the BJP failed to reach its targets or number of seats in Gujarat elections. The BJP had set itself a target of 150 plus seats in the state, but it managed to win only 99. Congress, on the other hand, has managed to win 77 seats, up from 61 seats in 2012. And Rahul said that BJP lost seats because the country is not listening to the Prime Minister anymore. And he said Modi's Gujarat is good propaganda but hollow from within.
बीजेपी को जबरदस्त झटका पड़ा है और गुजरात में पड़ा है। मुझे वहां पता लगा कि जो मोदी जी का मॉडल है, एक्चुअली उसको गुजरात के लोग मानते ही नहीं है। प्रोपेगेंडा बहुत अच्छा है, मार्केटिंग बहुत अच्छी है, मगर अंदर से खोखला है। और जो हमने कैंपेन लड़ा, उसका वो जवाब नहीं दे पाए। मोदी जी की क्रेडिबिलिटी पे बहुत बड़ा सवाल उठ गया है। एंड फ्रैंकली मोदी जी हैज अ क्रेडिबिलिटी प्रॉब्लम।
Now, the Parliament held its third sitting of the winter session today, and Finance Minister Arun Jaitley defended the move to set up fast-track courts for dealing exclusively with criminal cases against politicians. Jaitley reiterated that lawmakers should take the lead in setting an example in his response to Chidambaram's question on what's preventing BJP from bringing petroleum under GST. Jaitley responded that the BJP is in favor of GST on petroleum products and he awaits consensus of the states. Listen in.
The honourable member, when he has asked me this question, is certainly familiar with the whole issue. And in fact, more than familiar. He'll recollect that when UPA was in power, they knew the limitations as far as petroleum is concerned. So in the Constitution amendment which was proposed, the 115th amendment, petroleum was kept out completely of the GST. The UPA Constitution amendment draft proposals presented before the Parliament did not include petroleum products ever to be a part of the GST itself. Because the UPA well knew that it will be a deal breaker if you between the centre and the states if you bring petroleum in, and therefore you did not even make an effort. Now that you are in opposition, you have a far greater flexibility in reversing your position. That's a different matter. After a great deal of consultation, we had managed to persuade all the states to agree to bring GST to petroleum within the GST itself. But the states reluctantly agreed to do so. In the initial drafts, they were not agreeing. In meeting after meeting of the Empowered Committee, we persuaded them. And finally, the deal with the states was that petroleum will be brought in the GST as far as the Constitution amendment is concerned. It's only when the states decide and agree upon it that the council will have the power to then decide to bring the petroleum into the GST. As far as the central government is concerned, we are in favor of bringing it. Let me categorically state this. We are in favor, but we would await the consensus of the states, and I do hope at some stage, sooner than later, the states agree to the consensus. As far as the October 17 prices that you have mentioned, yes, we are equally concerned. There was a rise as far as the crude prices were concerned. Therefore, we did bring down some central duties. We also wrote to all the states to bring down the state duties. Please don't forget that a large part of the taxation on petroleum is also the state taxes itself, on petroleum itself. And I'm glad a number of states governed by the BJP brought the prices down. The UPA states singularly refused to bring the prices down as far as the petroleum is concerned in October.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi today chaired a high-level meeting at Kavaratti in Lakshadweep to review the situation due to Cyclone Oki, which left a trail of destruction in the Union Territory. And Modi will also visit the cyclone-battered areas in Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And today, during his visit to the southern states, Modi will visit coastal Kanyakumari and Thiruvananthapuram, where he will meet the cyclone victims, including fishermen and farmers' delegations. And parts of Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Lakshadweep were severely affected by the cyclone late last month and early this month. A PMO statement said that the centre has released the second installment from the State Disaster Relief Fund for Kerala and Tamil Nadu to supplement the efforts of these states in dealing with the situation. And the US President Donald Trump is breaking with the recent US convention by portraying China as a rival that wants to undermine American prosperity. In a new national security strategy report, the White House lumped China with Russia as powers seeking to challenge American power and influence and interests. And in a speech in Washington, Trump said that the America's first approach will help ease America's $500 billion trade deficit with other countries.
We also face rival powers, Russia and China, that seek to challenge American influence, values, and wealth. We will attempt to build a great partnership with those and other countries, but in a manner that always protects our national interest.
And the US Ambassador Nikki Haley blocked a United Nations Security Council resolution asking countries not to establish diplomatic missions in Jerusalem. This comes less than 2 weeks after President Donald Trump vowed to relocate his country's embassy there from Tel Aviv. Nikki Haley said that the United States will not be told by any country where it can put its embassy after exercising the first US veto since 2011. The other 14 members of the Security Council had earlier voted in favor of the resolution introduced by Egypt.
Witnessed here today in the Security Council is an insult. It won't be forgotten. It's one more example of the United Nations doing more harm than good in addressing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Today, for the simple act of deciding where to put our embassy, the United States was forced to defend its sovereignty.
And the US Congress is all set to pass the tax legislation this week, and this after 2 Senate Republicans agreed to support Trump's new tax plan. Senators Susan Collins and Mike Lee confirmed their decision to back the legislation, and the deadline set by the Republicans for the bill is Friday. Kathleen Hunter of Bloomberg News tells us why Republicans are likely to put the legislation for voting before the end of the week.
Well, I think there's been a lot of focus on the Senate because the margin is so slim there, and Republicans only start out with a 52-seat majority. They already lost one Republican vote this week in the sense that John McCain, who's battling brain cancer, isn't going to be available to vote. So, you know, every vote is essential, and Collins has been a little bit cagey about whether or not, up until now, whether or not she'd vote for it. So I think her coming out in favor of it kind of cements that in all likelihood it's going to pass. I mean, it looks like there's not going to be a Republican opposition. And so I think that, you know, that's why there's been so much hyper attention on kind of this drip, drip, drip of each senator that was kind of holding out their support as they've come on board. You know, we saw Corker and then Rubio and now Collins. And so I think that's why there's been so much attention around that. It looks like the momentum now is just going to kind of push it through and then really in the next, you know, coming hours.
And the elections in Catalonia is getting messier by the day. Ahead of the Thursday vote, 3 parties looking to break away from the win are expected to win the elections with a slim majority in the 35-seat Barcelona. This will be a setback for Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, where Maria Tardio of Bloomberg News sums up the situation in the ground report.
It's an unusual election. Remember, just 2 months ago, we were right here. This new republic was being created. Now, the situation is very different. Madrid is still very much in command. And as you mentioned, there's people who are running in this election who are either in prison or have been to prison. So in that sense, it's a very unusual ballot. Now, looking to today, it's a very final day of campaign. And essentially what we know is that the pro-Spain parties are going to try to get out and tell people to go and vote on Thursday. Now, with their bet-in here, and the central government is also betting on this, this is that we're going to get a record turnout. Voters have never felt compelled to vote in a regional election and finally help tilt the balance in their favor. But of course, polls, as you mentioned, looked very tight. If you look at polls where they're looking at is a turnout of 80%, which is absolutely remarkable. And that's interesting because the pro-Spain parties are essentially betting this time we're going to get, as I said before, voters who've never voted before, who feel that this time they have all the guarantees they need to vote in a legal ballot, and they're going to do so. Now, I want to point out, though, that doing well in this election for the pro-Spain parties doesn't actually mean you get to government, because the electoral law here actually works against them. So we could get a very, complicated situation, and that's where the market might be a little bit complacent at this point. Doing well in the election doesn't mean you actually get to government. Now, I do want to say, however, Article 155, which, as you remember, suspends the region from its self-government, is going to be in place until a new government is formed. So it's not just Thursday, it's until a new government is formed.
Well, and with that, it's a wrap on this show. I hope we've helped you catch up with all that you missed through the day. Thanks for watching and stay tuned in the Bloomberg Quint.